Welcome to the Mindfully Masculine podcast. This is Charles. Okay, so Dan and I are in the home stretch. We are almost done with our review and discussion of Self-Care for Men by Garrett Muntz. And in this episode, we get into some of the spiritual practices that he recommends as a possible form of self-care for men. And this was a bit of a tough episode for me because a lot of these recommendations or these practices are not the kind of thing that I'm into, that I have experience with, or that appeals to me. I try not to be too closed-minded and judgmental, but I probably fail at a few points. So please bear with me. When I sound just like a grumpy old man, I am, but I'm trying to be a bit more open-minded. So if you're into any of these things, my intention is not to insult you or to tell you to stop doing anything that is bringing value in your life and making you feel better. So full speed ahead, but just be prepared for me to sound a little rough on some of these topics. I hope you enjoy the episode, and please consider subscribing to the show on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks very much.
Hey, Charles, how are you?
I am well, Dan. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
What's new with you?
What's new with me? Not a whole lot. Just been...
All right, good talk.
Yeah. What's new with you?
Let's see. Did some traveling. I went to Omaha last weekend, Nebraska.
Yeah.
As opposed to Omaha, Alabama. Mainly to go visit their zoo, have a little bit of steak. Mission accomplished on both fronts. It's a fun city. A little very Midwestern-y feeling. Although I guess there's some debate on whether Nebraska is in the Midwest or not. Some say it's too far west to be Midwest.
Oh.
Yeah. But the government hasn't really defined what the Midwest is exactly. And so it's up for grabs.
Or you could just go with Nebraska.
That's close enough. But a lot of high quality animal exhibits at the zoo. Saw some good stuff.
Okay.
Saw a lot of lemurs, like kinds of lemurs I didn't even know were a thing. I learned about some new lemurs, so I appreciated that. I enjoy the lemurs.
What are lemurs known for? What are
They're
not lemmings. They are.
No, lemurs are not lemurs. They're a primate. They're a monkey variant. Yeah, usually I think the ring-tailed lemurs are probably the most common.
Okay. Now, did Ross have a lemur?
Oh, no, I think
what was
that was a monkey. I forget what kind of monkey that was.
Okay. All right.
Saw monkeys, gorillas. Yeah, lots of good stuff. The one mistake I made, though, and which I did this in Cincinnati, too. If you're traveling to a new city to go visit their zoo, don't go on the weekend unless you absolutely have to. I went on Saturday, and I should have gone on Friday. Just so many kids and families, and it was way too crowded.
It slows you down.
Slows you down, and a lot of kids who don't know how to act and don't have parents that have taught them how to behave. Mm-hmm. Kids banging on the plexiglass where the gorillas are, try to get a reaction out of them and stuff. It's easy for me to say because I don't have kids, but
yeah,
it's also easy for me to say because it's true. I would not take my child to the zoo or really the church or the restaurant or anything without having a conversation to say, here's the behavior that will be expected of you in this place. And obviously I wouldn't expect them to live up to that 100%. They're kids, but the part where you just don't even bring that up to your kid, like it's clear, like these kids have never been told that, like they weren't having an emotional experience where they were having difficulty or they were tired or they were hungry. It was just, they're in a place and nobody gave them a clue on how you're supposed to act in that place. And it's 100% of the parents, not the kid. Yeah.
I have no problem with a kid being a kid and needing to learn how to behave the right way. I've got a problem when the parent is lazy.
Right.
Where the parent doesn't give a shit.
Yeah. And they're checked out talking to their friend or whatever, and the kids are just up to their own thing. And yeah, that frustrates me as well.
And it can be the other way because I have seen parents that do corrections in a healthy, nice way. And
oh yeah,
it's not like we're living in a dream world where we're like this could never happen. We're not asking for a miracle, right? It's just.
But what happened the most in public seems to be either the parent is just checked out and not paying attention to their kid, or they blow up at their kid and have their own little the parent has their own meltdown about, stop that right now, or I'm going to take you out to the car. It's like, both of those are just like, oh man, this is not fun to watch.
No, absolutely not.
So if you go to the zoo on a weekday, you don't have to do that.
I know growing up, my mom most of the time it would not start with a yelling. It would be a correction.
Yeah.
It would be Dan, don't do that. You don't have to do that. If I kept it up, then eventually, but there was some sort of corrective measure put in place the first time I did something that wasn't really the way to behave.
Yeah, I think...
And I think it's because my mom was embarrassed if I behaved that way.
Yeah, there has to be the interventions have to be meaningful. When your parent says, hey, can you knock that off? Or something along those lines, like a very casual thing, like that history has taught you that means something. Like, yes, I do have to. Because I know what the escalation looks like.
Exactly. And if there's never been, if you don't make the kid realize that the consequences for their behavior is going to be something that's meaningful to them.
Right.
When a parent casually says, hey, could you stop that? And there's no actual consequences until they're screaming at the top of their lungs. I don't think that's effective.
Because that's and maybe the good stuff happens more than I notice it, but what I notice in public is usually the ignore the kid, freak out.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right.
It's very uncomfortable to see that happen because, oh boy, how do they handle this when they're at home alone when the public's not around?
It's stressful. I feel bad for the parent because now they are super stressed out. And
I don't feel so bad for the parent.
But at the same time, I just feel like there's such an easy, and again, I don't have a kid either, but it just seems like there's a difference between going from 0 to 100. There's got to be a little bit of space in there where they could operate and be effective.
Yeah.
And do it in a less stressful way.
Neither of us have kids, but both of us do know how, when a situation starts to go off the rails, how to recognize it and take a step early in the process rather than late in the process. And that seems like it would be a skill that could translate to raising children, but I don't know, maybe there's more to it than I'm thinking of.
The other thing, too, is they could be absolutely exhausted from the trip, from being already stressed out and not doing enough self-care, right? So that they're already operating at a level where they're super stressed out. So they don't have the capacity to do the thing the right way in a calm way.
Which I understand. There's still a responsibility there. It's okay, you need to develop practices and the habits that you need to so that you're up for taking your kid to the zoo. Right. But if you haven't done that, then the managing your kid at the zoo is going to be difficult.
Yeah. So to bring it back to me, you're asking me what I've been up to. One of the things that I rediscovered was my list that I made for myself of when I'm at my best, and I had that written out somewhere, and I completely lost it in the house of clutter. And I found it the other day, and I updated it, reviewed it, made a couple of copies of it, posted it up in a couple other places in my house, and I realized the number one thing I listed there was having an organized house and office, because when it's cluttered, my mind is cluttered.
Same.
And it just subconsciously, I have this like higher level of stress. And once I decluttered the house, I felt my level of stress. And now I could look at what number 2 was in terms of when I'm at my best and tackle that. So I think that's an important takeaway here, is figure out what you do, the things you do on a daily basis or weekly basis that make you at your best so that you can handle those challenging situations like a kid banging on the glass of the zoo.
Yes. Yes, fortunately I did keep up some of my self-care practices, so when I witnessed it, I didn't.
That's great. So you did that. You were able to translate that to while you're traveling.
Yeah, it's also
one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, not a lot. I don't do everything that's on my list. I use what's that called? The productive app to keep track of my habits and have it remind me of do these things. And I got all of my be it your best habits on that thing. So
great.
I'm reminded and I swipe on them as I do them. Some of them I don't do as religiously when I'm on the road as I do when I'm at home, but many of them I do. And so the more the merrier, quite literally.
Do you feel like that actually made a difference on this trip by doing some of those things versus on trips where you've just let it all go?
Yes.
Because the reason I say that is because sometimes we are so disciplined about getting all these things done on our daily basis at home that we just need that mental break. And when we go on vacation, we get that mental break from doing all these rigorous tasks. Or
some of them are
tracking of things for me, because for me sometimes it's a little stressful, tracking food, tracking water, or waking up and writing things out. That takes extra time. And so like when I'm on vacation, if I've been doing that regularly at home, sometimes it's nice to get that break.
Yeah, for some of the things that's true. The stuff of washing and moisturizing my face when I wake up and when I go to bed, it's like it's not that it's stuff that I wouldn't do if I wasn't thinking about it or I wasn't reminded, but it also doesn't take much to.
Oh, good.
It's not like tracking my water all day. That would be a little bit more, which I don't do. That would be a little more intensive than just my morning and nighttime routine. So yeah, the easy stuff I'm willing to do on the road. The more difficult stuff, like when I travel, I don't pack my journal with me.
Oh, did you used to? Because I did. No, I always had the best of intentions, and then I never used it. And I'm like, why am I even adding this extra weight to my back?
Yeah, that's the thing, though. You bring enough luggage when you travel that you should have a porter. And so putting my 5-year journal in my one tiny bag that fits under a Spirit Airlines seat, that's valuable space that I can't waste on my journal. So I just leave it home. And, I try to take enough pictures that I can use those as a way to reflect on what I was up to. But it's not as good as writing in the journal. It's better than nothing. All right, we're going to kill a whole part of this book today, not just a chapter, because this is a rough one, man. I missed the masturbation talk compared to having to go through this.
Who doesn't? Come on.
I hated that too, but I might hate this even more. We're going to go on, again, it's Self-Care for Men by Garrett Muntz, and the part 6 is about spirituality and various spiritual practices that the author asserts can be useful in self-care. Some of which I agree with and some of which I disagree with. First part is all about some new age ideas and practices, including things like astrology, reiki, tarot cards, sound baths, and mediums, which, okay, listen, if you're into any of those things and you find that the practice of those things helps you to be healthier, happier, more centered, then by all means, keep them up or even do more of them. If it's working for you, don't listen to anybody who's not into it convincing you that you shouldn't do it. So that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to convince anybody not to do these things. However, for me personally, trying to add things to what I consider to be an already pretty packed schedule, things that I am not convinced would have a positive benefit, that I would just be doing it because, it's a new thing to try, and a guy who got a book published says that these things are helpful.
Yeah.
That's not enough to convince me to do something. And were I to look to external sources for validation that things like astrology and tarot cards and going to a psychic, were I to read studies that people have experienced very concrete, tangible benefits that were outside of the placebo effect, that I would consider doing that. But as far as I'm concerned, these are the kind of things that, again, because of my own experiences and my own biases, these all feel like a waste of time to me. And being a guy who wastes his time does not help my self-care. It would harm it.
Yeah.
Again, if you get something out of these things, by all means, continue to do them and enjoy. But if you're not into them, I am not going to suggest that you start doing them.
Yeah. For me, I've done most of these.
Yeah.
And a couple of times. And for me, it's entertainment and interesting. And I'm not basing huge life decisions on them. I'm not changing my world based on the information that I'm getting. I do think it's entertaining. For me, it's entertaining. I'll do it once in a while. It's not a regular practice that I do. And it's a way of, for me, a little bit of a stress relief from the normal day-to-day stuff that I'm doing. And it stimulates a different part of my mind because I might hear something that I never thought of before. And for me, that's stimulating and it just makes me think about some things differently. But mostly for me, it's like entertainment purposes.
Yeah, and that's fine. I want people to have ways to just things to engage in that just relaxes them and entertains them.
Exactly.
And that's great. For me, there's an opportunity cost. Talking to a psychic for 30 minutes or an hour compared to watching a TV show I like for an hour, I'm going to get so much more as far as just relaxing and decompressing out of watching TV than I would going to pay somebody to tell me what my dead relatives have to say.
Yeah. Know thyself, right? Know what works.
Yes.
That's part of it. That's part of the exploration.
And certainly this book, be willing to try new things that you may not be into. But look, if you know that you're not into something,
Why? Right.
Don't take somebody's advice to try it.
I'm not going to keep eating black licorice.
Yeah. Oof, that's the worst, isn't it?
Pretty bad, especially when a surprise jelly bean gets in the mix. Get like a handful of jelly beans and then
you get a black one.
Licorice. Oh no,
yeah,
man,
that's one of the.
It ruins the whole mouthful.
I've never understood how people are into that.
Yeah, some people are really into that.
Yeah, I
not for me, man.
Okay, so the next section that we're gonna blow through because I don't see a lot of value in is something called smudging, which I've heard of this concept before. I didn't know that's what it was called, but this is where you burn sage or something sage adjacent in your house to remove a phenomena that he refers to as negative energy, which is never really defined by any person I've ever heard talk about negative energy.
This is a big placebo effect right here.
Yeah, it's if setting something on fire and sniffing the smoke makes you feel good, then obviously once you've taken precautions to make sure you don't burn your house down, by all means, then do that. Or buy an air freshener or spray some Glade. Whatever works for you, then do it. But believing that there is some metaphysical thing happening under the surface that we really can't observe or measure in any meaningful way as far as Western science is concerned,
right?
I'm not going to be taking any time to do that. And again, if you find anything that he attributes to negative energy, there are some pretty clear psychological definitions and concepts that make more sense to me than negative energy.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would say about burning sage or something like that and waving the smoke around, and if you're not satisfied with how your life's going, and you're like, man, I need to figure out something to help my mood be better or to make my life feel more positive, I would not say burning sage is the thing you should start with.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think start. What I found interesting was he did define negative energy a little bit in a way that I hadn't heard before, which is when you are meeting a lot of people, you are interacting with them, and you are basically bringing in some of the energy that they have into your mind, into your subconscious, and you might be consciously remembering some of those interactions and subconsciously not, but you're also picking up their body language, how they are, the expressions on their faces, and that might be, as you're doing that all day long, you might not be consciously aware of that, but you might be bringing in some of that negative energy and kind of playing in the back of your mind. And I never thought of negative energy in that way, but I agree with that. As if you've got a busy day, you're interacting with a lot of people, and if these are stressful conversations,
right,
you're going to feel stressed at the end of the day more often than not. And I look at what he's talking about, these smudging tools, like what you said, is it's more of a symbol of saying, okay, I am done with this. And just to say, okay, I'm done feeling this way. I'm going to start looking for feeling better in newer ways. Well, I don't necessarily believe it does anything under the surface to actually get rid of it.
Right.
More just serves as a symbol to say, okay, I'm done with that part of
right.
my day. I'm ready to move on. I'm open to some new experiences and some new feelings. I'm letting that go, helping to compartmentalize those experiences. So whether it's spraying Glade or just going for a walk, whatever that is for you. And if the ritual, maybe making coffee, right? Okay, I made like in the morning, okay, ready to start my day. I'm letting go of the bad dreams I had last night or whatever.
Right.
But I think that ritual, and I think this smudging kind of falls into that in my mind.
And listen, everybody can define these things however they would like to, and it's not my job to tell you that's wrong or that's right. As far as I'm concerned, the negative energy, as far as we know from science so far, when you have those interactions with people and you're stressed or you're uncomfortable or what, your experience is happening inside of your brain, your consciousness, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. We don't have anything so far that tells us that there is some force or some energy or some transfer of one person's mood from their brain to your brain. It's just there's nothing woo-woo or mystical. You don't have to believe there's anything woo-woo or mystical going on to say, yes, it's probably a good idea for me to go home and make some sort of cognitive transition to what was going on before to what's going on now. And yeah, again, go ahead and do it. I don't care. It's fine. Do it if you want to do it, and think whatever you want to think is going on under the surface. That's okay. If it makes you better at all the roles you have to fill in your life, then do it. But again, like I said with the last thing, if you're not happy with how things are going and you're like, I need to make some change, I need to bring some more positivity into my life, I wouldn't say step one is I need to burn some sage.
Yeah.
I think there are more higher impact, lower effort things you can do to bring in some positivity, like journaling, like mindfulness meditation, like going for walks, like therapy, there's a lot of things I would put on the list higher than smudging or, going to a psychic or whatever that we know is effective. Like we have evidence that, okay, these things tend to work every time somebody is concerned about elevating their mood. So do those things first.
Yeah.
And then if for entertainment purposes or for a little boost, you want to do some of these other things that are less validated by Western science, then go ahead and do them too. That's fine. I'm not saying not to.
Yeah, I look at it as a game, right? And there's value in playing games to be able to have fun.
Right, but these are the side quests.
Right.
What
I'm saying is these are games versus doing hard work, because journaling or going to a therapist, that can be hard work. That can make you feel uncomfortable a little bit at times, but that's why they're probably effective. Because you're breaking through some boundaries, whatever. Whereas this, it's a little bit more of a lighthearted type of just making you feel good type of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's an important lesson, that generally the practices and the activities that are going to bring the most positive change they're going to be the ones that are the most uncomfortable in the moment. So the easier something is to do, the less long-term positive change it's probably going to actually give you.
Correct. Yeah, it's the whole comfort zone thing, right? Was that change happens or life happens outside your comfort zone,
right?
Like that, or
growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So something is,
exactly.
And we'll get into some more of these practices. Now, on this next section is actually something I'm completely on board with, which is, he calls it a forest bath. I call it going for walks out in nature, but we're essentially talking about the same thing. It's interesting. He said some studies have shown that the average person spends upwards of 93% of their time inside.
That's a high number.
That's very high.
I didn't realize 93 sounds really high.
Maybe we're not average because we live in a warm climate. We don't live somewhere cold. We live in the suburbs. We don't live deep in the middle of a city.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say if you're living in a city you're in a very dense metropolitan area and it's cold a good part of the year, somebody who lives in downtown Minneapolis, they're probably more likely to be closer to that 93% number that you and me are living in Florida. But as a result, it's good to make a deliberate practice of spending some time outside. Forest bathing, there are obviously benefits to that, proven benefits like cardiovascular and respiratory health, immune health, decreases depression, anxiety, confusion, lowers cortisol. So I highly endorse the idea of going for walks out in, if you don't have a forest, then do it at a city park. The bigger the city park, the better, so that you can feel like you're out in nature, not in the middle of the concrete jungle. But if you don't have access to a city park, he says, even do it in a garden or in your yard. But it's a good idea to spend some of that time in nature as often as you can. The typical forest bath, they recommend, and this is from a Japanese tradition, 2-hour sessions, which 2 hours just sounds like a nice time to spend out on a walk. And here's some of the practices he recommends. So in addition to giving yourself enough time, use what time you've got available, but 2 hours seems like it's ideal. Leave your phone behind, which, boy, that's a tough one, because I don't want to walk without my audiobook or my podcast. That's tough, but sometimes I do turn it off and just put it in my pocket on Do Not Disturb. Don't have a goal. So this isn't about walking to a place. This is about just being out there for the sake of being out there. Keep your senses open. Look around, smell, touch the plants, listen to the sounds. That's where a lot of the pleasure of this is going to come from. Don't rush. So try to keep your pace. This isn't about going for a jog or a run. This is keep your pace pretty slow. I would say 20-minute miles, maybe even slower than that, so that you can really look around and stop and appreciate things as you see them. Use the time to do something like stop, have a seat, look around. I don't know. I feel like don't have a goal and use the time seem a little bit conflict with each other.
I to use the time as a great way of phrasing it. To me, it sounds like he's talking about use your senses.
That was a separate one. He said, keep your senses open. That was one thing.
All right, hold on.
And then there's a whole other one he says some people like to meditate or do yoga, but it feels, okay, if I'm walking to the middle of Central Park to do yoga, that doesn't feel like I'm just doing a forest bath. That seems like I've got a goal, like there's a purpose for this thing. So there's a couple things in this section that seems contradictory to me.
In all fairness, he does say, if the idea of walking aimlessly stresses you out, then use the time, right? Then find a place and do the meditation or the yoga if you don't want to just walk and experience stuff. So I think he was just giving an alternative here.
Yeah. If I said to you, Dan, I think you would really benefit from this practice I've started called forest bathing, where you take a couple hours and you walk around in nature, and your response was, where are you going? I was like, you're not going anywhere. You're just going to be out in nature. And you're like, that really stresses me out, not having a plan. I'd be like, okay, let's unpack that. That would be, my next response would not be, okay, go do yoga or go sit and meditate. It would be like, so the idea of just giving yourself 2 hours to walk around
I get too much to do.
That stresses you out. So Dan, are you already meditating or are you already doing yoga? No. Okay, go walk in the middle of the woods and start doing this thing that you're not doing already.
Fair. Okay. Point taken.
I feel like the people who are already meditating and doing yoga, they're not the ones who are going to get stressed out by a 2-hour walk.
Good point. All right. I see your point. I agree.
I do agree with making a routine. And that's one of the things I just started this new book on called Slow Productivity. And one of the things that the author in there talks about is an autopilot schedule where you try to set up as much as you can in your schedule for the week of, at this time, at this location, I do this thing for this amount of time. Mm-hmm. And you build that into a habit.
Yeah.
And so it takes less cognitive effort to make it happen, because it's not just, oh, I've got this computer work that I need to be doing, and all these books I read tell me I need to be more social, I need to be around people, so I should probably try to find some time to squeeze in a trip to the coffee shop to do some of my work this week. And then at the end of the week, you didn't squeeze in any of that time because you were too busy in the middle of doing the things that you felt you were rushed to do, and so it just didn't happen. Where if you're able to do something a little bit more dynamic and structured, to say, listen, every Monday morning, my first 2 hours of the workday I spend at the coffee shop, and that's just what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've taken all the stress out of the trying to squeeze in a place to do this thing you think you should do, but it's not valuable enough that you're going to disrupt your life to make it happen. The next chapter is crystals. What can be said about crystals that I haven't already said about other things?
Salt is my favorite.
Yeah, I like sugar too.
All right. Attitude in the social media age.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Ascribing metaphysical properties to crystals, and that they have the ability to solve actual human problems.
Yeah.
Maybe they do.
Maybe. Or maybe you are subconsciously programming your subconscious, or unconsciously programming your subconscious to start thinking about things and solutions when you say, all right, I've got this crystal here and it's making me bring top of mind whatever issue that you're struggling with. And that's your actual, because I really believe that if you give your brain some direction, it will work on things. And that's one of the concepts I think behind meditation as well. So maybe one of the benefits, or why people think it works, is it just focuses your attention on a specific problem and gets your brain working on it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, based on how he describes using the different kinds of crystals and cleansing them and programming them and harnessing them, I don't really see a reason that I couldn't just use a quarter or a button off of a coat.
Correct. Yeah,
or pretty much any random crystal-sized object that, he talks about different properties that different color crystals have.
Yeah.
For example, the citrine is good for manifesting hopes and dreams and inviting prosperity. Says who? Based on what?
So here's another thing to think about, right? Is that, buttons and quarters we see all day long, and we already have attached strong meanings to what they do and what they're for. Where crystals, unless you live in some weird cave somewhere or whatever, you don't see them every day, right? And so they stand out and they don't really have much meaning other than, oh, that's a pretty looking object.
Okay.
And to me, I don't have a strong association of a meaning or with a crystal. It's pretty. That's about it. And I think it's easy to then apply some of these beliefs to these different things.
Well, like in that example, citrine, I would assume that you've probably seen a citrine before. And I would also assume that up until you read this book, you had no idea that it was good for manifesting hopes and dreams.
No.
Okay, so just seeing those characters on this page, do you have any more reason now to believe that's true about citrine than you did 10 minutes ago?
Logically speaking, no.
Okay, even emotionally, do you feel like, oh, I had no idea that a citrine could do that for me? Like, at what level does this
to me that's
bring value to you?
Again, it's to me, I look at it as just more of a placebo effect. When I see this, it's going to remind me to feel this way or do those things or look for those types of things in my world. So for a common example is I've been trying to sit up with better posture. So what I did was I took a blank Post-it note and I put it on places where I sit down. For example, at the dinner table, I have it on the TV. So when I sit down and I'm scanning the room and I happen to notice that blank Post-it note, it's just a reminder for me to sit up. So maybe these are just like ways that you can remind yourself of different things.
I guess my question is, and
I don't think it would make something happen.
I could be nitpicking. I could be just being unnecessarily negative, but like when you read that in this guy's book, a concept that you never heard of before and have never experienced before, if instead of that I were to tell you, hey Dan, I think if you want some new financial and business opportunities to pop up in your life, what you need to do is go out to your yard, pick a blade of grass and rub it on your right earlobe, and then good fortune will come your way. Wouldn't you say you have about an equal reason to believe that, other than knowing me, that I'm a cynical, sarcastic piece of shit? If I were to tell you that, what are the empirical reasons you would believe me any more or less than what this guy just said about citrine?
Yeah.
The fact that he had a book published?
And I'm not saying I'm not right. I'm just saying the way I'm interpreting this is these are suggestions, but he's probably saying more. I didn't read deep into this, but yeah, he's probably saying that these have.
I'm sure he heard it from somebody else. Who's that somebody else?
And listen, man, I'm not arguing with you. I agree. I agree. But what I'm saying is that you can use them. There is a purpose to using them, and I just don't believe the purpose is they've got power on their own. I just think these might be fun ways to remind yourself to do things.
Yeah.
Or think of certain.
My whole point in this whole section is, listen, we all have a finite amount of time that we are either willing or able to dedicate to taking care of ourselves in a way that will make our lives better. And when he throws up from shaving to going for walks in nature to cold plunges, it's like all of us have to read this book and decide, okay, I can't do every single thing that he recommends every single day or even every single week or every single month. So what criteria should I use to decide which of these things I invest my time in and which ones I don't? And for me, that criteria is going to be something related to Western science and Western medicine, Western psychology.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the best way to go about it, but based on where I was born and how I was raised and the information I've been exposed to, it's very easy for me to classify some of these things as, oh, that's something that I don't usually do or I haven't done before. I can very easily see the value that might have in my life, where the other things where it's, that would be a seemingly waste, that'd be a seeming waste of my time and my effort to do these things because I have no reason to believe that it would actually help compared to these other things that he's suggesting. And so everybody who reads this book will probably have a different way of assigning value to these things and coming up with, okay, somebody could read this and say, okay, I'm not interested in getting a therapist, but I am going to buy some sage and set it on fire today. Okay, great. Just, come up with whatever method is consistent with your values and your beliefs and assign priority to these things, and don't waste your time on the ones that you don't really think will have much effect.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is if you get the sage and then you're not seeing the results that you want, all right, maybe we need time to try something else.
Yes, I would agree. And I would apply that to all of them, even going and getting massages. If you go get a few massages and you don't actually feel any better or more relaxed, then stop getting massages. And but okay. Good luck, guys.
It's not for you.
Some of this stuff,
All right.
The next one is for me, which is gratitude. And he talks about specifically what we deal with regular media and social media, and constantly seeing the best version of everybody's life and all the fun and exciting things that they do and the cool places that they go, and just keeping in mind that that's not real life and that's not a reason for you to feel bad about yourself. But you're still going to sometimes. You're still going to see what some people are up to and be like, man, that's not fair, or I wish I had that. That's just human.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that will help with that is by taking stock of the things that you do have going for you, working for you, and being grateful for those things, and building a practice where you regularly spend time thinking about those things and being grateful for them. And it'll make you feel better.
Yeah.
Here's the advice. You can start with a list, and that's pretty much any gratitude practice. Is you think in your mind of some things that you have that you're grateful for, whether that's your health or the breakfast you ate this morning, or whatever small to large thing it could be. Just make a list in your head and then actually write it down on paper or type it up. I think there are some studies that say actually putting pen to paper or pencil to paper is more valuable than typing something. And there are plenty of times where I feel better by journaling in a book than I would by typing it into an app.
And I totally agree with that. And I'm wondering if that's because it takes more energy to write things down rather than typing. And a lot of our stress and anxiety is tied to having extra energy. We've got our fight or flight response going, and it's same as like taking a walk. Slightly different, a lot less energy to write something, but it's even less energy to type something out versus actually writing. And you might be feeling a little bit more better. Oh boy. Kick me off the podcast right now.
Yeah.
By doing that, I was wondering if there's something related to the physical action.
The other thing I would think of too that might have some effect is, depending on how old you are, when you were born, there's a certain connotation to a computer keyboard to me that I still associate it more with work than I associate it with recreation.
Me too.
And my phone, not so much, but certainly my computer keyboard, when I'm typing on a computer, even if I'm doing something fun with it, it feels like I'm on a work tool. I'm not on a fun tool. I'm on a work tool.
And even when I'm using my phone for any type of journaling, I'm doing voice. I'm speaking into it anyway, and I'll type a couple, and then it just gets frustrating to me to type on my phone. So maybe the act of speaking is...
I would say it's probably better than typing, but not as good as writing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. He does say to be specific. Try to drill down. Like the example he gives is, I'm thankful I have food to eat. Instead of that, say, man, I'm thankful for how my omelet came out this morning, and try to really narrow down on it, because it feels more real when the details are in your imagination.
The more you can feel it, the more powerful it's going to be.
Yes, absolutely.
So get specific.
Yes, and also be consistent. Try to figure out a time every day that will work for you. I can say I've had the reminder on my Productive app to do gratitude journaling at night, and I never do it. So I had this what seemed to make sense, this idea of, at the end of my day, that's when I'll go through and I will summarize the things that I'm grateful for that day. No, for me, it's not working. What I need to do, because my five-year journal, I write in that every morning with much more regularity than I like. Almost every day, I'm able to check that off the list. I get it done almost every day.
Yeah.
But that's not the case with my gratitude journaling, and it's really because of the time of day. So as soon as we're done recording, I'm actually going to move that. So I'm going to take my gratitude journaling off of my evening list and put it on my morning list, and I'll just reflect back on what happened yesterday and use that for the fuel for my
I'm exactly the same way. I've got so many more morning. It's the 5-minute journal, has both a morning and an evening part.
Okay. And you filled out a lot more in the morning section.
So many more mornings where like the bottom of the evening is just blank.
Yeah. The other thing in my evening habit practice is, like, I've got on there to wash my face and then put on my night cream that we talked about a few episodes ago. And in my morning, I've got wash my face and put on my moisturizer with sunscreen. That happens almost It's not as much as some of my other things. I don't do it quite as often, but because a lot of times I'll wash my face in the shower and then my moisturizer's not in the shower, so sometimes the moisturizer won't get on. But it happens way more frequently than the nighttime ritual does. It's just, for me, just because of how I like to wake up, how I like to get things done, having an organized ritual in the evening is a lot harder for me than having one first thing in the morning when I wake up.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to say if it was a ritual, you'd be doing it.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think you just haven't built that ritual yet. And that's where we have to build those rituals and those habits so that we're using less energy. So that's just something you do. You're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so it's just you haven't practiced it enough.
And I haven't practiced it enough because I don't see enough value in it. Like,
there you go.
I see enough value.
And that's okay.
Doing it when it's in the morning.
You're not getting enough benefit out of it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because when I wash my face and I put moisturizer on, it makes my face feel good. I look better. The idea of doing that and then just crawl into bed, what's the point?
Right.
I'm going to be asleep in 20 minutes.
So for me, the evening journaling, when that happens, it's because the why for me is strong enough. And what that is usually is I feel like I am multitasking, I'm spinning in my wheels, I'm not getting a lot of stuff done or accomplished that is productive, and I feel like I've done nothing all day long but been so busy. And so it's just like, I'm feeling stressed, I'm not sleeping. That gets to a point of where I'm like, all right, let me just write down everything I did today. It's not even gratitude. It's let me just make an inventory of all the stuff I did do. And then I'll look at that list at the end of the day before bed and I'll be like, wow, I did do a lot. And it also helps me prioritize for the next.
Sure.
Okay, wait a minute, I wasted too much time doing this stuff or whatever, and it wasn't beneficial for me. But it settles me down and go, okay, I didn't completely waste my life today.
It's a great reminder that we're not going to build habits for things we don't care enough about. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah,
so
that's the key, man.
You've got to care enough about it to turn it into a habit.
Keep asking, I get to the bottom of that.
So he says to keep it fresh, which means don't just write the same 3 things every day or 4 things or 5 things. Like, figure out some way to introduce some variety into what you're thankful for. Because, if it's going to lose its meaning to you if you just keep writing the same 3 things down every day.
Same thing we were talking about affirmations, where you keep saying the same affirmation over and over again, and you don't really believe it. And that's what you got to feel it, you got to believe it. It's got to be meaningful for you versus it starts turning into background noise if it's the same.
Exactly. He does suggest to find time throughout the day to do this, and I believe in context, I think what he's saying is, have your consistent schedule where this is the time that you do it, but then in addition to that, find some additional, as things happen on the fly, try to recognize them as something to be grateful for and make some sort of a note. Again, whether that's, I'm not going to travel throughout the day with my gratitude journal, so I've got to either record a voice memo or type it into my phone or something or even just, if I'm in a private place, say it to myself verbally out loud. That just happened and I'm thankful for it. Something like that, where you're bringing attention to your ability to feel gratitude for things.
Yeah, maybe take a picture of it and make.
Oh, that's a good idea too.
Just do a voice caption. Just text caption on that picture.
Yeah.
You remember, okay, what it was that triggered those feelings, then just make a quick note.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Something to break up your day with a little bit of gratitude, because there's way less valuable things that are going to interrupt you. You might as well interrupt yourself with something good. Be flexible, which means if you miss a day or you're unable to come up with something because your mood's very low that day, then that's okay. That you don't need to experience some sort of a spiral where it's like, I give up on gratitude journaling now. I'm not going to do it anymore. Where in a lot of ways that is something that, we all experience that with diet, exercise, other positive habits where it's okay, I missed a day, so now why bother?
Yeah.
Where, being able to recover from personal failures is a pretty important thing, and being able to not beat yourself up over it. And so certainly gratitude journaling would fall into that. He does mention, we talked a little bit about social media being the thing that kind of gets you feeling, bad about yourself or your situation. Here's some tips that he says specific for Instagram, because it's the one where people really like to showcase what they're doing. Limit your time that you spend, and you can do that by setting up, most smartphones will have a tracker where you can either have it alert you or you can tell it flat out, don't let me use this after a certain amount of time per day, per week, whatever. Unfollow people who make you feel bad about yourself. So if you're following people who are either very successful, very wealthy, very fit, very attractive, and you're thinking, oh, this will motivate me, but really what it's doing is making you feel just bad about yourself all the time, just stop following them. You can find other ways to motivate yourself than looking at people who seemingly have it all together. Mute your friends when they're on vacation.
I thought that was a good tip.
Yeah, I think so too.
I never thought about that, but that's a great idea.
Yeah, I've never really, part of this is probably because I travel so much. I've never really felt like FOMO when somebody else is on a vacation. I've never really thought, oh, I feel bad that I'm not there right now.
Yeah.
But I could see where that could be a factor. And if it is, then yeah, just you can mute them. And then at some point, when you're not seeing they're posting their story 20 times a day, every day in these, beautiful places, it's like usually most people who they'll either save it as a highlight or they'll do one post that you can swipe through after their vacation.
Yeah. Just
look at that. And then you're done. You're not constantly being interrupted with your Instagram browsing of all these great things that your friends or acquaintances happen to be up to. And then finally remember that influencers are not your friends. They're trying to sell you things, whether that's the products that sponsor them or their lifestyle. And yeah, if somebody is a big enough deal that they are an influencer, that they're probably getting to do some things for free that you don't get to do. Or they're probably getting to do some things that are partially paid for that you wouldn't be paid for.
And that's deceiving, because then you might be thinking, hey, this is important enough for this person to spend the money to do this thing. Meanwhile, they got it for free and probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a possibility as well.
Yeah. All right. So let me see. I still want to, we got one more chapter to get through in this section, and I think we can do it. We're about 59 minutes now, but this chapter is titled How to Be an Extrovert, which I think is a little bit of a clickbaity title. Introverts, as far as I know, can't turn themselves into extroverts. They can certainly develop habits that make them more outgoing.
Yeah.
But if you're an introvert, you're an introvert. If you're an extrovert, you're an extrovert. That's just the way it's going to be. Reshaping basic portions of your personality because a book tells you to is not something that I would really put much time or effort into.
Yeah, I would not look for this to be changing your personality in any way, but more...
Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert is a pretty basic part of your personality. I don't think... Again, in the actual text of the chapter, he doesn't say, here's how you go from being an introvert to an extrovert. I think it's just a crappy title that was made to get attention.
I think the title should be How to Be More Extroverted.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, in being an extrovert and introvert is part of your identity. And as far as I know, that gets formed with your personality when you're pretty young, and it's not something that you can just up and change. Now, according to the Myers-Briggs that I've taken multiple times, I'm on the fence between introvert and extrovert, and usually I'm on the extrovert side of it. But you've dealt with me in public before. There's some times where it's like, Charles does not look very extroverted right now. Charles looks like there's nowhere he'd rather be than at his house alone. And I certainly do feel that way sometimes. But then other times I'm at a party, I'm at a large social function, I'm having a blast. I'm feeling energized by it. So
I think it just really depends on the event.
The event and the person. There are some people that are probably extroverted 99% of the time and some people that are introverted 99% of the time, where I just happen to be one of those people that's a little bit closer to the border between the two. And so, yes, when you are close to the border, then it really does depend on, okay, who are the people there? What's the activity? What's the venue like? What kinds of things are there that you really enjoy? What kind of things are there that annoy you? Like loud music, for example, or whatever it is.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, there's no book, and we'll get into some of the methods for how you can teach yourself to be more outgoing. One of the things he suggests is get more into listening to what people have to say and not being up in your head while somebody's talking to you. So really try to pay attention to their story.
That's not easy.
Yeah.
At least not for me, it's not.
Again, that's another thing that depends on the person, too. It's what are they telling me? Who are they? Do I feel like they're worth listening to, or am I just going to check out and think about what I'm going to say next or what I did that day at work or whatever? But yeah, the better listener you are and the more people feel like you're a good listener, the more social opportunities you'll have. That's the first thing on the list. Next is visualize, and that's where he suggests before you go to an event with a lot of people and a lot of activity that might not be your kind of thing by default, do some work visualizing what it would be like to be there and having a great time and what would the most fun version of this look like. And then when you're there and you're not in the most fun version, you're in the most realistic version, you can at least put your attention toward the parts of it that are the most fun for you.
Yeah.
And focus on those things instead of the things that are the most annoying for you.
Yeah. I think by default, a lot of times I'm guilty of this is I'm visualizing all the stuff that's going to annoy me or all the stuff that's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
Or all the, and again, when I consciously...
That's when I usually decide not to go at all.
But when I consciously like ignore that part of my thought process and usually I'm not visualizing all the things that are going to go well. I just stop my primitive brain from coming up with these assumptions and these extremes of the negative side. So that's really all I've gotten to. I've never actually taken the time to visualize all the wonderful things that could happen. So that's interesting.
And yeah, one thing he doesn't mention, I don't think, maybe he does kind of in the next section. It's not about being more outgoing or extroverted, but I would say if you're going to something like that where you think there's a good chance that there are going to be some things that make you uncomfortable or annoying, but there could be some things that are fun, just try to go with somebody that you usually have a good time with, because then you can tell yourself, okay, if I go to this thing and it's not ideal, at least I'll be with someone. I always have a good time when I'm hanging out with him or her.
Mm-hmm.
And then, especially if you have the same things that you enjoy, the same things that annoy you, when somebody does something stupid, you can give them a glance and be on the same page with them. There's a lot of value in having somebody who's on the same page with you to enjoy or be annoyed by those things with you. So I would say, yeah, don't try to go out and do these alone and white knuckle your way through it.
Yeah.
If you've got a buddy or a friend that you can go and enjoy it with. And maybe you have a friend that talks you into going to some of these things that you wouldn't normally go to.
Yeah. What's actually been surprising for me is listening to briefly the negative thoughts about how much effort and time and energy this is going to take to go to do this thing, and I'm a little tired right now. And when I shut that down, what I've done is I've set the bar really low. So it doesn't take much good thing to happen. It could have been just a mediocre kind of type of experience that happens at
it's not as bad as I thought it might be.
And what that has done is, in my mind, I've developed a pattern of every time I don't feel like doing something and I push myself to do it anyway, it's always a surprisingly good thing that happens at that event. And I've developed that kind of pattern. So now it's easier, it's quicker for me to dismiss my primitive brain and just move on and just go, instead of wallowing in it and thinking about it and end up not going and procrastinating, and then before you know it's too late to even go, right?
Yes.
That's just a little insight that you didn't ask for. You're welcome.
I know. I appreciate it. The insight I'll offer that you didn't ask for is, if you try to set up these growth opportunities to be events that are free or very low cost, then you also don't have to beat yourself up about leaving early and bailing.
A good point. Right. Yeah.
And I've done that. There's only one time I can think about where I was at an event and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I wasn't having fun, but it was among like friends and acquaintances. And I told somebody, I was like, hey man, I got to get going. They foolishly responded with, why? Which generally I find people ask why in situations that they shouldn't ask why, and I do not coddle them. I say, because I don't want to be here anymore. That's what I told the person, and then I left. Because look, I don't, in that situation, I don't think you lie. I don't think you make up an excuse. I decided I wasn't having fun. I didn't want to be there anymore, so I decided to leave.
Yeah.
And a socially intelligent person would say, oh, thanks for coming. It was good to see you. And then safe travels or something like that. There's people in your life who are a little bit less emotionally or socially intelligent when it comes to that, and lack some tact and don't really understand how that interaction should go in polite society. And so they'll ask a question like, why? Where are you going? Why are you leaving so early? And I think those people deserve the truth.
Because I don't want to be here anymore. Maybe you should say that to the host of the party.
If the host of the party is the kind of person who says why when I tell them that I'm leaving, especially if I'm like, thanks for inviting me, but I got to get going.
Yeah.
And then they hit me.
That's different.
Then they hit me with a why.
Okay.
I got to get going. I got to get going.
I don't want to be here anymore.
No, I don't want to be here anymore comes after the I got to get going. If I say I got to get going and then they hit me with a why, that's when they get the I don't want to be here anymore.
Some social grace is okay. All right.
I've got all the social graces. I didn't do anything wrong in this scenario.
I don't want to be here anymore.
I only say that when somebody says why.
Right. Okay. Oh,
I start with I've got to go.
Okay. I thought
I would always
started with
no. I always would start with, hey, I've got to get going. And then if the I got to get going is not enough for somebody, if they want to
poke the bear, you want to poke the bear? All right. Okay. Here's the truth.
Exactly.
Open kimono. Here you go.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, because again, in that situation,
I forgot.
I am unwilling to make up an excuse. I'm unwilling to say, saw on my home security camera that my cat threw up. I got to go take care of it. Or
right.
I'm not feeling well, or I got to wake up early in the morning. No, if I got to get going is not enough for you, then okay, here you go. So I guess the other lesson is when somebody says they got to get going, just say, okay, good to see you. Safe travel.
You don't need to dig.
You don't need to dig.
Because then at that point, you're trying to make them feel, I feel like they're trying to make you feel guilty.
Yeah, because it does feel like they're opening the door to talk you out of the reason.
Right. Yeah. It's just, all right. Yeah. We're not gonna play this game.
No, we're not. Okay. So here's one that I disagree with. Take no out of your vocabulary. For introverts, the gut reaction to most invitations is no. Stop saying it. Accepting all types of invitations opens up new experiences. And if you don't try it, you may not find out if you like it. The exact opposite advice that I believe Adam Grant was the one that originally said it. The idea of if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no.
It's a hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no.
Right. If it's not a yes, it's a hell no.
Correct.
Yeah. In my own life, that has been much more valuable to me than say yes to everything. Because look, you go to EDC. You've gone at least a year or two, right?
Yeah.
If you invited me to that, there's no way I would say yes to it.
Yeah.
Because I would only ruin my night and yours and anybody else who was close enough to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm a 46-year-old man. I know the things that I might be into. I know the things I'm absolutely not into.
Yeah.
And spending my time on the things that I'm absolutely not into is not going to help anybody, including me, which is most important. I would say if somebody invites you to something that you absolutely know, either because of your social anxiety or because of the way you react to loud noises or because of the way you're uncomfortable in crowds, look for little opportunities to stretch some of those when you can. But in my example, going to EDC would be like the worst possible scenario for me. And so I would just never do it.
Yeah.
And so when something hits your radar in that way where you're like, oh my God, that seems terrible. Like Times Square New Year's Eve would be like top of that list for me as well. If somebody invited me to that, there's no way I'm saying yes to that because...
You know enough because you've been in similar situations.
Yeah, I've been in the lower versions of that situation that I hated.
Yeah.
So why would I go to a situation that ramps it up even more? And yeah, and I would say, to experience growth, you don't have to make yourself do things that you hate. In fact, that's the opposite of growth.
Correct.
That will turn you off from even trying the little things that could have benefit.
And don't go to that extreme.
It's go big or go home, right? Yeah, and we've talked about that.
So, for example, you've gone to a smaller music venue and you really haven't enjoyed that.
Yeah, when I went to the Vanguard with you guys, it wasn't awful. Right. It was enough for me to be like, okay, just checking in. It still isn't my thing. But I wasn't miserable sitting there. I hate this. I'm having a miserable time.
But it wasn't.
But it also wasn't, I should do more of this.
Correct.
Yeah. And so, I would say, there you go. So don't take his advice of not saying no to anything. I would say, be willing to do some things that you're not sure about and that you might usually find a little bit uncomfortable.
Use your discretion.
Right, but don't just go to the worst possible version of something because somebody invited you.
Yeah, I think the rule of thumb here is if it makes you a little uncomfortable, then maybe consider doing a yes here. Where it's a lot uncomfortable.
Yeah, here's another part that is seemingly, to me, self-contradictory. The very next one is accept yourself. Opening yourself up to new people and new experiences doesn't mean you have to completely change your life. Look for a balance you feel comfortable with. Yes, but there's no balance in saying yes to every invitation. That's the opposite of balance.
Right.
So I'll believe the second part, which is where he's right, and I'll ignore the first part where he's wrong. All right, we're almost done. We got a couple more pages. How to share self-care. You can do this. You don't have to do all this on your own. You don't have to try to adopt some of these practices for making your life better by yourself. There's ways that you can share this with other people, which will actually make it easier.
Yeah, start a podcast.
That's a big one.
Right, yep.
When you're at the mall with Dan, suggest that both of you go in for chair massages.
I love me a chair massage.
Yes, that was fun. The two of us, that wasn't on our agenda that day, but we're like, hey, we're here.
I told
you, I was like, I was here last week and I got a pretty good chair massage. Let's pop in and get one. And we both sat there and let the guys work on us. It was great.
Awesome.
Participate in group activities like workout classes, a forest bathing group. That'd be interesting. Book club. And that kind of goes next with the next one is use social media. Facebook is great for finding calendar like events that your friends are already going to that you might be interested in, and meetup.com is great too, and their app is good for finding things like the one that I almost went to a bajillion times was people who would go to Disney to get their steps in. There were like there were 2 or 3 walking groups that would go to Disney, Universal, and they would walk around the hotels, walk around the lakes, and just get their steps in that way.
That sounds great.
While chit-chatting with each other.
Yeah.
And the chit-chatting with each other was the part that kind of kept me from doing it. The other thing was like, they want you to RSVP so they know how many people to show up. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to say I'm going if there's a chance that I might bail. So I'll just not commit to going at all. But stuff like that, that's one of those areas where it might be a little uncomfortable for me, but I should probably try it anyway.
Yeah.
No, that as opposed to, Charles, you should go run the Boston Marathon.
And one of the things, the points that you made, which is important, is think about if you're going to do something that potentially is uncomfortable, whether that's going to the event or something happening at the event, think about what your exit strategies could be. And that might grease the wheels enough for you to actually go. So you having a chit chat with somebody that you don't want, you could just say, hey, listen, I'm listening to a book or a podcast or whatever on your phone.
Yeah.
You put in and just walk by yourself.
Yeah. That's a great out for you and me. We do a podcast where we review and analyze books. So that's a very honest and very convenient excuse to say, hey, I've got to listen to this book before the podcast episode I have to record on Fridays. So I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah. Knowing you can unwind what you've done, it helps me try new things.
Exactly.
It's not set in stone.
Yeah. You're not
there forever.
Yeah. To go out and try a running group or a walking group is not, you're not signing a 1-year contract at a gym. You're just popping in and you're seeing if you like it. And even if you want to bail in the middle of it, you could just give them hey, I got to get going.
Yeah.
And again, 9 out of 10 people will not say why. And if they do, then let them have it.
You know your response.
So talking about it. So yeah, when you're hanging out with your friends, family, talk about some of the new self-care practices, and that might lead to a conversation of, oh, I'd love to try that too. Next time you're going, give me a call and let's do it together. Yeah. And then finally, open your mind, be open to even new kinds of self-care that may not have been covered in this book, although it seems like you got most of them. But they're doing new things with new people. You could see some opportunities come up when you're on the lookout for it. And then the last section, he does mention, if you are an extrovert, if introversion is not your problem, if extroversion is, here's some of the things that you can do to get some of that time to recharge and not feel like you constantly have to be entertaining other people. Turn off your phone, or I don't hardly ever turn my phone off. My move, the thing I use frequently, I love the do not disturb with the location feature. It says, I was on a date last night, and once I verified that she was about to walk in and she was going to need to text me for directions or an emergency or whatever, I put my phone on do not disturb, and it said, until I leave this location. And so automatically I use that for my men's group too. I tell it, okay, as long as I'm in this geographic location, I don't want to see any alerts or things like that. And it's my favorite version of the do not disturb that iPhones have, is to say, because it's the things I find important that I have to give all my attention to are almost always location based.
You're right. Yeah.
So I can very easily say, as long as I'm in this place, I don't want my phone to interrupt it.
Yeah.
And turning your phone off, I don't do that, but I use do not disturb.
I use the time, but again, I didn't think about that because a lot of times, like if I'm at the gym, the time runs out and all of a sudden I'm getting all these alerts and stuff like that because I took my time too long to
Exactly. Yeah, I used to do that at first because my men's group is an hour, so I would set it for an hour. But then the meeting after the meeting, when you're having a coffee and you're having a deep conversation one-on-one with somebody, you don't want your phone to start, buzzing you like crazy.
I'm going to start using location. I love it.
So yeah, and then finally, for extroverts, declining invitations. Instead of saying yes to everything, pick one thing to politely decline each week. And I could see that. I could see some value in saying no. And there's business books and workbooks that talk about that too. And I think even Norm Mr. Nice Guy said the idea of not just saying no to something, but asking someone to do something for you that you could do for yourself.
Yeah.
There's value in that. There's also value in saying no to things that you could do. And it's not just to mess with people. It's to say, okay, no, my schedule is not something that just happens automatically based on what other people need of me.
Right.
My schedule happens intentionally based on what I need to get out of life.
Yeah, I literally this week made theme days. I put it on my whiteboard. I don't know if you saw it or whatever, but I figured out what my priorities are for each day of the week. Like Fridays are for friends, Saturdays for relationships, Sundays for work, personal development stuff, and then Wednesdays is for house cleaning and tasks and organizing and stuff. And I realized that's my natural tendency. I try to make Wednesdays to do creative work. And the problem is I am still in the middle of the work week and I'm still getting customers and everybody else pinging me for work-related stuff. So my brain can't turn that off and be creative to work on coaching stuff.
Yeah.
So I realized what I was doing anyway was I was doing laundry in between like checking some email real quick or whatever. So I'm like, you know what? I can do the physical stuff around the house. So my Wednesdays are that priority. I'm going to try to say no to things that don't fall into those categories on those days.
Yeah, that's another thing that this book I'm going through mentions a lot, which is we were so naive back in the 90s when multitasking, as soon as it became a product feature to use to sell the Windows operating system, that everybody decided we had to integrate it into our careers. That switching cost of going from one kind of work to another kind of work, it does eat up time. And also with me and my whatever level of ADHD I have, when I'm in the middle of switching from one thing to another is when I'm at the most vulnerable for some distraction to pop in.
Yeah.
Like when I'm immersed in doing the thing that I've got to get done, distractions will still get to me, but not nearly as much as when I've just finished one thing and I've just started another thing. That's when I really get distracted by something else.
Yeah.
So, all right. We covered a lot today, and we finished this unit on spirit, and we won't have to talk about it again.
Nice work.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
I will talk to you soon, Dan, and I'll edit some stuff out so we can shorten this one a little bit. We're pushing an hour and a half.
Sounds good.
All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye. Wow, you made it through the whole thing, so you must like us at least a little bit, in which case you should definitely follow or subscribe to our show in your chosen podcast app. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time.